Well, we could cross now to Bristol in the UK to speak with Jim Shields, who is a professor of French politics at the University of Warwick. Thank you very much for speaking to us here on France 24. Now, we've been hearing a lot of emotional tributes here in France today, but Chirac was not without his fair share of scandal, especially in his later years. How do you think Chirac will be remembered outside of France specifically?
Well, I'm personally mystified by the extent and the intensity of the tributes that are being heaped upon Jacques Chirac over the past 3 days. Chirac's public standing as a politician and as a president was nothing like this. Jacques Chirac was a classic, many would say cynical operator within the Fifth Republic's presidentialist system, where he mastered the formula for success: launch a party as a vehicle for his personal ambition, eliminate your rivals, promise everything it takes to get elected, and seize the prize, even if it takes 2 or 3 attempts. Chirac expended much more energy plotting his route to the Élysée, over 20 years it should be said, than he expended trying to improve France once he got there. So it's a difficult question, weighing up this legacy. In office, he took the route of least resistance most of the time, preferring to preserve the status quo rather than disrupt it and challenge powerful vested interests that were opposed to change. After his first painful experience of street protests against his attempted reforms in 1995, he never tried serious reform at home again until an attempted labour market reform in 2006, which he again withdrew in the face of street protests. So there is that problem when weighing up Chirac's domestic legacy. On the other hand, he cut a large figure on the international stage, and the service that we've just witnessed today and those present are testament to that. He was a president who represented France well on the international stage. He spoke well for France. He was, in that sense, an old-fashioned Gaullist, putting France's interests first, and considering that it was the whole network of international relations was about furthering France's interests.
Now, Chirac was perhaps best known abroad for his staunch opposition to the Iraq War. There were no representatives, as far as I know, of the UK government at that memorial service earlier today at the Église Saint-Sulpice. Are we right to read anything into that, do you think?
I think the first thing you can read into it is that UK politics is in meltdown currently, as you probably know. The Tory party, the governing Tory party, is having its conference. The opposition is planning how it can unseat the government. So British politics at the moment, it has never been more inward looking. So that's the first thing I'd read into it. I don't think I'd read anything in terms of a snub to Jacques Chirac. The one person who might have been there, and I don't know why, I didn't see him there, and I suspect he wasn't, but the one person who might have been there was Tony Blair. But for whatever reason, he doesn't seem to have been present.
Now, he did have an extremely long political career spanning over 4 decades. Is there one defining moment, would you say, from his time in power?
I think you've put your finger on the defining moment in terms of external affairs, in terms of world politics and diplomacy. And that was, of course, standing up to the US led invasion of Iraq in 2003. The defining moment in domestic politics, I would say, was 1995, his first attempt at serious reforms of the welfare system and pensions. Once he had withdrawn that from the table in the face of street protests, his presidency never recovered. He was hampered ever after by the images of the opposition he had encountered. And it's interesting, if we look at what Emmanuel Macron is coping with today, labour market reforms, his plans to reform the welfare and pension systems, those are unfinished business from Chirac's defeats over attempted welfare, pensions and labour market reforms. And the Gilets jaunes, who have done so much in the past year to rock the Macron presidency, you could say are an updated form of the street protests which forced Chirac to abandon those earlier attempts at reform. So there's a lot in Chirac that points to enduring and unresolved problems with which the current president is wrestling all these years later.
Jim Shields, Professor of French Politics at the University of Warwick, thank you very much for speaking to us here on France 24.